Greetings, everyone. Aziza Sacred Wellspring of Sacred Sister Soul Talks TV, coming to you today with part two of our discussion on mothers and sons. My host last week, Zion's daughter, had a frank discussion about the role mothers plays in their sons' lives and how often do they hear the words, I love you. So today we continue that discussion where we take a look at the Willie Lynch letter and how that has impacted our social development with our sons. So looking forward to that discussion, and I will see you very soon. Stay tuned. Greetings, everyone. Aziza Sacred Wellspring of Sacred Sister Soul Talks TV, coming to you today with my guest, Zion's daughter. I'm waiting for her to come on into the meeting room. Today, we are discussing the Willie Lynch letter and its impact on our sons, on our family, the Black family. So I will share my screen with you. Um, and hopefully she comes in soon. Okay. Now, how many of us really thought about the Willie Lynch letter and its impact? We've heard this discussion over the years about Willie Lynch, and right now I'm not concerned with whether it is true or not, but I know a lot of information in this document have had an impact on the Black family. So today we are going to discuss that. Welcome, Zion's daughter. Welcome to our broadcast. Glad to see you. I can't hear you at all. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I pulled up the
Beautiful.
Willie Lynch letter. How was your week? How was your day so far? How was your day?
My day was I got, when you get like a quiet revelation, but it's so powerful in its revealing to you that that's the beginning of a new you. That happened to me
Mm.
today.
Oh, we're going to talk about that shortly. But today we were going to
Sure.
talk about the Willie Lynch letter. I pulled it up on the screen so that our viewers can see what we're talking about and its impact on the Black family. We're concluding
Sure.
with our part two of mothers and sons. So take it away.
Certainly, I hope everybody's had a really good weekend. And in the Willie Lynch letter is something that I read a long time ago, and it stayed with me because of the nature of the origin of the letter. Now, some people say that it is fake. Some people say that the man Willie Lynch was actually a plantation owner in Barbados, which makes things a little interesting considering Barbados's affiliation with North Carolina and the helping of the making of the Carolinas plantation system.
Very true.
So I it stayed with me because if this is supposed to be fake, then someone did a very good job of psychoanalyzing the Black race
Mm-hmm.
and wilting us down to formulas that they say will work.
True. Very true.
Now, obviously, there are people who went into things like the etymology of the language being used and saying that it could not have been from 1712. However, let's take a look. I'm not going to read it because it's pretty lengthy. But
Yes.
if you start from the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Lynch is there thanking the colony of Virginia for
Mm-hmm.
letting him come there. So that means that within that colony they were having problems with slaves. And if you read enough about slavery and the history of slavery, you will find out that there were so many uprisings, poisonings, rebellions, and so on. That's why they beat our forefathers and did innumerable horrible things to our ancestors because they fought every step of the way.
Yes. Well,
Now,
I noticed in the
he,
beginning, he mentioned about ancient Rome would envy us if the program is implemented. Would you be able to speak to that line alone is disturbing?
well, if you look back at Rome and its use of slavery, its use of crucifixions, its use of a lot of horrible and cruel things, you would
Mm-hmm.
understand where he's coming from there.
Mm.
Rome was very good at annihilating. If you even had to just read a documentary about Julius Caesar alone, he's not the only Roman Empire. He was not the only he was not the only emperor of
Mm-hmm.
Rome, but he's one of the most famous.
Mm-hmm.
And the cruelty
Mm-hmm.
of each of the Roman empires were
Mm-hmm.
just unimaginable.
Right.
So maybe that's what he is
Mm-hmm.
implicating there. And as he goes on, he says, you know what your problems are. So
Yeah.
they knew, even if this was fake, this
Mm-hmm.
is one of the most intensely detailed written letters that is supposed to be fake. People have made books about it, they've made documentaries. So even if it was fake, what I find interesting is that I do not know of anyone who has sought to break from off of us the implications of this letter.
I agree. As I
Let's
was
hope that
researching
this
it,
podcast is the genesis of that.
of that. As I was researching
Mhm.
it for our discussion this evening, I made some highlights on the document. And I noticed in there when he
Mhm.
mentioned ancient Rome would be envious. And then I highlighted, if you could see my screen, I'm not sure if you can. Um, he says, I have foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. How does that now fit in with what's been happening with our sons, mothers and sons, as what this broadcast is about? Because I can clearly see its effect, but from your perspective, how do you see how that has affected us as a Black family?
Let's break it down, um,
Okay.
not line by line, but let's break it down.
Mm-hmm.
He says that he has a foolproof method of controlling the slaves, guaranteeing that it will work no matter when in time.
Mm-hmm.
300 years. Some people have said 2019 was the fulfillment of the 500 years
Mm-hmm.
of Deuteronomy 28.
Mm.
Some
Wow.
people have said that 29 curse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so even if he wanted, he was saying that into perpetuity, this is going to last because you're talking about 300 years, at least two generations per 100 year. I mean, my
Mm-hmm.
great grandfather, when I was a little girl, he was in his 90s. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one generation. I am another generation. So what he's saying is that at least 2 to 3 generations will be impacted by this. So at which point do we see that
Mm-hmm.
the generations are in need of healing?
Right. Agreed.
His method, he says, is very simple, and it is also always the simplicity of a thing
Mm-hmm.
that makes it very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
A wheel turns, but without the cogs, it just rolls. It doesn't really perform. The
Very
rims
true.
of the wheel hold up the car.
Mm-hmm.
So what he is trying to imply is that into the generations, this is going to work because I finally figured them out.
Yeah.
I figured out that they don't like this slavery. But if you tell them that they're not slaves, if you tell the field Negro that he's worse than the house Negro and tell the house Negro
True.
he's
Very
better
true.
than the field Negro, we have seen that. We've
Yes.
seen where we have divided ourselves. We have
Even
done
today
a
in the very jobs
fantastic
that we do.
job.
Even today in the
Yes,
very jobs. Yep. Yep.
we
Yep.
have done a fantastic job of fulfilling this letter, and it has become a self-fulfilling prophecy
Fulfilling prophecy.
where,
Yes.
correct. Now, just look at something as simple as our hair. We we have for many, many years, our foreparents, our grandmothers separated us by our hair texture
Yes.
alone.
Yes. It's very true. Because he said,
Okay.
even in this letter, distrust
So
is stronger than trust and envy stronger than adulation, respect or admiration. He says the Black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling. So what you're saying is absolutely correct.
correct. Our people, us who are Black, who are of African descent, I know that there is a trend, a school of thought that says we were already here. Even if a number of us were already here, all of our foreparents entered into slavery. Some actually were slavers.
Yes.
Not all were slaves.
Well, that's
Good. Now when he
Go
now
ahead.
when he goes on to, sorry about that, when he goes on to say that the Black slaves shall carry this on and becoming self-refueling, I want you to, in my research of Barbados, now I like history a lot, and I just read upon history because it is a Monday evening. I have no reason. I just like history. I go and I either watch a documentary or I read something. And I remember reading up on the history of Barbados, and it said that in the 1700s, like probably late 1700s, the plantation system stopped bringing in African slaves and relied on the slave population to create more slaves. That right there is the genesis of our problems that we are. So maybe, just maybe, Willie Lynch is not a lie, because if you dig into who they say he is said to have been a plantation owner from Barbados.
And that is interesting
If you
because
have stopped,
let me say something, because remember we said the people that are
yes,
from here, indigenous here, and for many years we assumed that Willie Lynch was actually a Caucasian. Willie Lynch could very well have been a Black man.
we don't know.
We don't know. We don't
But
have a picture of Willie
but the
Lynch.
fact that he was from the West Indies
Indeed.
and more than likely from Barbados, because
Uh-huh.
I want whoever is listening to understand something. You can speak to the great Hilary Beckles about this. Barbados was a social experiment on how to make the African slave a slave for life. Barbados, when the English colonized it, they first colonized it using indentured labor. So their intent was to always have this little island created through slavery.
Yeah, but how does
They
that
used
now
the Irish and the
impact our
Scots.
sons though? How does that impact our sons? Because
Okay, I'm getting to there.
yeah,
I'm getting there. So
yeah. Okay.
yeah, so follow me on this. Follow me on this. The Irish and the Scots were entered into indentured servitude. With the African, slavery became something that broke apart, something that Africans, even to this day, cherish, that is family. If you go to continental Africa, family and marriage is heavily emphasized. Let's not get into the cultural implications of some of the terms and conditions
Mm-hmm.
of marriage. Family and marriage is very heavily emphasized.
Mm-hmm.
Slavery broke apart that. We don't even want to discuss all of the filth that was done to break apart families, or how they bred some of us into slavery. But by the breaking apart of family, when the plantation system said, I am not bringing in slaves anymore, these people have got to make slaves for me. A man and a woman, whether they're voluntarily or involuntarily made a baby, are now required to raise that child as a slave.
Mm-hmm.
Let's delve into the mentality of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you are raising a child to believe that they are nothing, what do you feed them a diet of?
Mm, I love that question.
Now, let's go back into our grandparents, because I cannot go further than that. I can go as far as my great grandfather because I knew both my maternal and paternal growing up, great grandparents. But I will go just to my grandparents. You grew up hearing things like, how you in a good, how the neighbor has the right to hit you, how the anyone on the street has the right to tell your parents on you. We value that as a thing that seems to have kept us cohesive. But if some people were honest enough, they would admit that a lot of older people used it as a means of control. And a lot of older people used it to tell lies on little children. And that
Mm-hmm.
actually happened. And you got a severe beating for it.
I
You,
agree.
generation after generation, raised children to believe that they were nothing. This
Mm-hmm.
is a problem in Barbados.
Mm,
However, boys were valued above girls
that's true.
because in
That's
the
very
slave
true.
system,
Mm-hmm.
boys were the point of breeding. They were the breeders.
Yes. Keeping it to
Our
the Willie Lynch letter, he says, and just to
grandmothers,
expand upon what you said, he said, distrust is stronger than trust and envy stronger than adulation. He says, the Black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, will carry on and become self refueling. He says, don't forget, you must pitch the old Black male versus the young Black male, and the young Black male versus the old Black male. And we see that in Barbados society today, the old ones trying to prove that
yes.
they're hip and still got it going on, and the young ones proving, well, I don't need you. So it's kind of like a pissing contest sometimes, you know?
But let's just even I was going to even get there, because when you start to look at the old Black male against the young Black male,
Mm-hmm.
let's look at our island, because we cannot look at other people's islands. We have to look at our own.
Right, right.
Let's be honest about the older men. Many of them would have, like my great grandfather, left for Panama,
Mm-hmm.
and many other men left for Cuba, Guyana, Trinidad, Panama. They went to England, they went to World War I and II. And the women that were left behind to raise children. And some of them, if you go into the historical records and those who did stories from back then, found it difficult. And it was easy to pamper the boy child and give him all the best. And in some cases, total neglect. When you
Very
have
true.
a
Very true.
refueling now of, then a lot of the men started to come back home. and young boys are there taking care of mommy and family, and the older men come home, they felt displaced, and you had a lot of domestic violence. This was told to me by an older woman. Come forward now into modern times. Younger men are going out and having an education. Younger men are attaining things. And you have this competition where older men are trying to get all the younger girls. When Willie Lynch now starts talking about the old black male against the young black male, you are talking competition for female attention. You're talking not competition, but invalidation or validation as to what is a man. An older man telling a younger man their version of manhood. Younger men fighting and saying, we don't really want that. The older men saying, y'all can't be really men because y'all are letting women control you and you're listening to men. So we have that problem right there. We also then have the other problem of women, mothers with their sons, not having those older men do their part to raise the child that they left that woman with. And she having, a lot of women have told me when I get into honest discussions with mothers of sons, how difficult it becomes after a while raising a boy child without a proper authority male figure, not a weak male figure, but a proper authority male figure.
Wow. This is really, really
and we don't want to,
it's really interesting.
now we don't want to believe that the implications of slavery still live with us today, but it does. It lives with us with how much we serve our boy children versus we serve our girls. It lives with us by how much we have allowed our boy children to believe that it's okay to be the village ram as long as you bring she in my house, don't go in anybody else's house. How we have told our boy children to not take responsibilities if they get a young lady pregnant. How we've told our boy children that it's okay to validate what is seen to be male heterosexual behavior.
Very true.
And the more that the boy engages in that, the more he is seen as a man. And then when you have these older men who, some of them do not, what's the best way to put this? Some of the older men don't father the younger men.
Very true. So there's the absence of that male figure in the household. But we're coming up on our half an hour because we only have a half an hour today. I would love for us to continue this. Hopefully, maybe before the weekend, maybe I can string you into having another discussion. This is really interesting. I love your perspective on how you reach back into slavery to now bring some kind of semblance to why we're doing what we're doing or why our sons are doing what they're doing, because it is rooted in how we were socialized, and not just us in this lifetime, but from 400 years ago, how it was planted, that seed was planted back then, and where it continues to refuel itself. Zion's daughter.
Of course, but even if you...
Pardon me? I didn't get you.
Anyone who gets their hand on the letter, please read it, especially the part about breaking the African woman.
I know, right?
You see, that is the point where we must understand.
Yes.
The lioness raises both a lion and a lioness.
Ooh!
She does not raise only lions. She does not only raise lionesses. She raises both.
Both.
And if the
That's what
African
he
woman,
said. Wow.
the,
Wow.
let's take something seriously and understand
Wow.
that we have been worked on psychologically as a race of people, whether we were here in these parts of the world or not. Someone somewhere in history messed with our future, and
Yes.
that future is right now. What we have to ask ourselves is what we're going to do about it.
Yes, and this is a good place where we end this broadcast until next week. We need to continue this discussion with the Willie Lynch letter. You've opened up my eyes to looking at it in a different light, coming from having read this letter, more than 20 years ago. Know that we're going through what we're going through with this changing cycle in energies. I would love for us to explore that possibility and really dissect this letter. And you're doing a wonderful job of that. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this broadcast for this week. Zion's daughter will join us hopefully next week, where she can she can share with us her thought, because let me tell you, she opened up my mind with this Willie Lynch letter in a whole different light. And I'm so thankful for her wisdom. This is a lady who's going places, and I'm so happy that this is where she gets her start with Sacred Sister. I'm really, really excited about what we'll bring to you guys. So thank you again, Zion's daughter, for coming through to Sacred Sister Soul Talks TV. Guys, recommend a friend, tell
It's
a
my
friend
pleasure.
about us, and go on and check out the channel. I have more videos on there, and Zion's daughter will join us next week for part 3 of this broadcast. Thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon. Have a wonderful evening. Peace and blessings. Thank you.
Thank you. Blessings.